I think my marriage ended over a tube of toothpaste. My name is Anya, and I'm a 34-year-old architect. My husband, Ben, also 34, is a software developer. We've been married for 3 years, and for most of that time, we built a life together in our sunny Seattle apartment that felt like a perfect private sanctuary. We had our rhythms, our inside jokes, our quiet Sunday mornings with the newspaper spread across the floor. I truly believe we were a team. The crack in our foundation appeared in the form of Ben's father, Arthur. Arthur is 68, a widower of 5 years. He'd always been a quiet, somewhat stern man, but he lived across the country in a small Ohio town. Our interactions were limited to holidays, which were always a bit strained. He never outright said I wasn't good enough for Ben, but he had a way of looking at our modern, minimalist apartment, at my career, at our decision to wait to have children, that felt like a silent, constant judgment. The problem began when Arthur had a minor heart scare. It wasn't a full-blown heart attack, but it was enough to shake him. He became anxious about living alone, convinced the next one would be fatal if no one was there to find him. Ben, who carries a heavy sense of duty, especially toward the parent who raised him alone, was immediately consumed with worry. "He can't be by himself, Anya," Ben said to me one evening, his face etched with stress. "He's terrified." The solution, in Ben's mind, was obvious. Arthur would move in with us. I was horrified. "Ben, our apartment has 2 bedrooms, and the second one is my office. He lives in Ohio. His whole life is there. There are retirement communities, assisted living facilities we could look into. He's my father," Ben said, his voice firm in a way I rarely heard. "I'm not putting him in some home. He'd see it as us abandoning him. He needs family right now." I felt the walls of my sanctuary begin to close in. How could I refuse? The alternative was to be the heartless daughter-in-law who left a frightened old man to die alone. So, against every instinct screaming in my head, I agreed. Arthur arrived with 3 large suitcases and a palpable air of discontent. From the moment he stepped inside, our home was no longer ours. He didn't just move in, he occupied. He took over the small second bedroom, and my drafting table and blueprints were unceremoniously shoved into a corner of our bedroom, a constant, messy reminder of my displaced life. The criticism started almost immediately. It was never loud or confrontational, just a steady, dripping tap of disapproval. He'd pick up the artisanal sea salt and honey toothpaste we bought from a local marketing grunt. "Real toothpaste is fluoride. This is just expensive nonsense." He watched me make a salad for dinner and comment, "A man needs a hot meal at the end of the day, not rabbit food." My kitchen, my pride and joy with its carefully organized shelves and high-end appliances, became his battlefield. He rearranged the cupboards because my system didn't make sense. He threw out my expensive balsamic vinegar, calling it fancy spoiled wine, and replaced it with a cheap, syrupy imitation. When I tried to explain, he'd look at me with such genuine confusion, as if I were speaking a foreign language, and say, "I was just trying to help Anya. Your generation makes everything so complicated." Ben's response was a broken record. "He's from a different time, Anya. Just ignore him. He doesn't mean anything by it." My feelings, my frustrations were constantly minimized, brushed aside as oversensitivity. Arthur's invasion of privacy was the hardest to bear. He never knocked. He would just walk into our bedroom, or the bathroom if the door wasn't locked. One Saturday morning, Ben and I were sleeping in, curled up together, a rare moment of peace. The door swung open and Arthur stood there, silhouetted in the hallway light. "The newspaper hasn't been brought in," he stated, as if announcing a state emergency. I yanked the duvet up to my chin, my heart pounding with a mix of shock and violation. Ben just sleepily mumbled, "Okay, Dad, we'll get it later." "Later? The news is fresh in the morning. Arthur replied, and left, leaving the door wide open. I started working later and later, finding excuses to stay at the office. I'd go for long, aimless drives after work, just to delay walking back into that tense, oppressive atmosphere. My home had become a place I dreaded. The comments about children started soon after. He'd see a commercial with a baby and sigh heavily. All my friends are grandparents, he'd say pointedly at dinner. I'm not getting any younger. A man's legacy is his family. He started saving articles about declining fertility rates in older women and leaving them on the coffee table for me to find. The worst part was the laundry. In a misguided attempt to be helpful, Arthur started doing it. But he washed everything. My delicate silk blouses, Ben's heavy jeans, our expensive towels, in scalding hot water with a harsh, cheap detergent he'd bought. He shrank my favorite cashmere sweater, a gift from my mother, to a size that would fit a doll. When I held it up, my voice trembling, he just shrugged. If it couldn't handle a proper wash, it wasn't quality material. You should be more careful with your spending. I felt like I was going insane. Every boundary I tried to set was met with bewildered innocence, and Ben always took his father's side. He's just trying to feel useful, Anya. Don't make a big deal out of sweater. I was drowning, and Ben was just watching from the shore, telling me the water was fine. The breaking point came from a place of profound, personal grief. Ben and I had been trying to conceive for over a year. It had become a source of quiet anxiety for me, a monthly cycle of hope and disappointment. 2 months ago, I finally saw those 2 pink lines. I was ecstatic, terrified, and overjoyed. I wanted to tell Ben right away, but something made me wait. I wanted to get through the first trimester, to have one piece of untainted happiness in our increasingly strained home. I didn't get that chance. I miscarried at 8 weeks. It was a quiet, devastating event that I went through mostly alone. During a week, Ben was traveling for work. The physical pain was sharp and fleeting, but the emotional ache was a deep, hollowing void. I was grieving a future I'd already begun to imagine, and I felt utterly alone. I couldn't bring myself to tell Ben over the phone. And when he returned, the house was so full of Arthur's presence, there never seemed to be a right moment. The words would stick in my throat. So I carried the secret and the sorrow inside me, a lead weight in my chest. Last Thursday, I came home after a particularly brutal day. All I wanted was to curl up on the sofa with Ben, to feel his arms around me, to maybe find the courage to whisper my sad news and finally share the burden. I walked in to find Ben and Arthur on the sofa, watching a loud war movie, a half-eaten pizza between them. There were no slices left. My stomach growled, but my hunger was more emotional than physical. I needed comfort. Is there any pizza left for me? I asked, my voice sounding small and pathetic even to my own ears. Ben looked from me to the empty box and shrugged. Sorry, honey, we finished it. Dad was hungry. Arthur didn't even look at me. You should have been home on time if you wanted dinner, he muttered to the television screen. Something in me snapped. I was tired, hungry, heartbroken, and so angry. I went to the kitchen, made a piece of toast, and went to bed, tears of frustration and grief soaking my pillow. The next morning, I was pouring myself a much-needed cup of coffee when Arthur walked in. He watched me for a moment, then shook his head. That stuff will rot your insides, he grumbled. No wonder you can't give my son a child. You're poisoning your body. The world stopped. The air left my lungs. I turned to him slowly, the coffee mug shaking my hand. What did you just say to me? He looked me right in the eye, his expression cold and sure. You heard me. If you took better care of yourself, maybe you'd be a mother by now. A real wife would have given Ben a family. The rage that erupted in me was white-hot and blinding. All the months of criticism, the invasion, the loneliness, the secret grief. It all converged into one seismic moment. "You vicious, hateful old man." I screamed, my voice raw. "How dare you? You have no idea what you're talking about. You have no right." Ben came running into the kitchen, his face a mask of alarm. "What the hell is going on? Anya, why are you yelling?" I was trembling uncontrollably, pointing a shaking finger at Arthur. "Ask him. Ask your father what he just said to me." Arthur looked at Ben, his face the picture of wounded pride. I just expressed concern for her health, and she started screaming at me like a banshee. "He told me I'm not a real wife because I haven't had a child. He blamed me for it." I sobbed, the words tearing out of me. Ben looked from my hysterical face to his father's calm, offended one. He sighed a deep, weary sound. "Anya, come on. You know he doesn't think before he speaks. He's an old man. He wants grandchildren. Just let it go. Let it go." Those 3 words were the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. He wasn't offending me. He wasn't horrified by his father's cruelty. He was asking me to swallow this monumental, life-altering insult for the sake of peace. The secret I'd been carrying, the grief I'd been nursing, broke free. "Let it go." My voice dropped to a deadly calm. "You wanted to let it go? Well, you can let go of any hope of a child, Ben. I can't get pregnant again. I miscarried your baby 2 months ago, and the doctor said it's unlikely to ever happen again." The silence in the kitchen was absolute. Ben's face went blank with shock. Arthur had the decency to look down at his feet. I didn't wait for a response. I turned, walked to our bedroom, and started mechanically throwing clothes into a suitcase. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Ben stood in the doorway, staring, his mouth agape. "Anya, why didn't you tell me?" he finally stammered. "Why?" I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Look around you, Ben. Where was the space for my grief in this house? When was I supposed to tell you? Between your father's critiques of my laundry and my cooking, you chose him over me every single day. You can have him. You can have this life. I'm done." I zipped the suitcase, brushed past him, and walked out of the apartment. I didn't know where I was going. I ended up at a hotel, sitting on the stiff, impersonal bed, shaking with the aftershocks of my explosion. The messages and comments on my post have been overwhelming. Many of you have rightly pointed out that I was wrong not to tell Ben about the miscarriage sooner. I know that. Believe me, I do. It's a guilt that sits heavy on my heart. But it wasn't as simple as just opening my mouth and saying the words. The truth is, I found out about the low probability of another pregnancy just days before Arthur's health scare began. It was a 1-2 punch that left me reeling. How was I supposed to tell my husband that the future we dreamed was likely impossible, right as he was grappling with the potential loss of his father? It felt like piling an unimaginable tragedy onto an already stressful situation. I was trying to be strong for him, and in the process, I completely broke myself. When I finally blew up, it was wrong. I know that. I should have told him privately, gently, but in that moment, with Arthur's vile words ringing in my ears and Ben's dismissal crushing me, I just broke. The dam holding back all my pain shattered. Ben called me at the hotel yesterday. He was crying. I'd never heard him cry before. He was hurt, confused, and angry. Angry at me for not telling him. Angry at his father, but mostly, I think, angry at himself. We met today at a park near our apartment. It was cold and gray, fitting for conversation. He looked exhausted. "Why, Anya?" was the first thing he asked, his voice ragged. "Why did you carry that alone?" I told him everything. The positive test, the secret joy, the crushing loss, the doctor's prognosis. I explained how his father's presence had created an environment where I felt I couldn't be vulnerable, where any sign of weakness felt like an invitation for more criticism. I told him that every time he told me to ignore his father, he was chipping away at my sense of safety in my own home. He listened, really listened, for the first time in months. When I finished, he was silent for a long time, staring at his hands. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I was so focused on keeping him happy, on being a good son, that I stopped being a good husband. It was what I had needed to hear for so long. But it wasn't enough. Ben," I said, my voice firm despite the tears in my eyes, "I am not coming back to that apartment as long as your father is there. I can't. It's him or me. You have to choose." The color drained from his face. "Anya, he's my dad. I can't just throw him out on the street. Then find him another place to live. An apartment, a senior living community, I don't care. But I will not share a roof with that man ever again. I need to know that you choose us, that you choose me." He left looking like a man who had lost his way. That was 5 hours ago. I'm back in the hotel room, and my phone is silent. The ball is in his court now, and I am terrified of what he's going to do with it. A month has passed, and it has been a grueling exercise in patience and pain. After our talk in the park, Ben and I began a series of strained, painful conversations. He was finally seeing the situation clearly, but that clarity brought its own agony. I refused to set foot in the apartment while Arthur was there. A close colleague from work, Maria, went to get more of my things for me. She later told me that Arthur had hovered the entire time, muttering under his breath about disrespectful women driving a wedge between a man and his family. He truly saw himself as the wrong party. Ben and I eventually landed on a solution. We would rent a small, ground-floor apartment for Arthur in a nearby suburb. Financially, it was feasible for us. It seemed like the perfect compromise. He'd have his independence, but still be close enough for Ben to check on him. Presenting this plan to Arthur was a battle. He cried. He accused Ben of abandoning him in his twilight years. He said I had poisoned his son against him. It was manipulative and heartbreaking to watch, and I could see the toll it was taking on Ben. He was trapped between his duty to his father and his love for his wife, and the pressure was fracturing him. We started looking at apartments. Ben and Arthur would go see them while I stayed far, far away, and every single one Arthur found a problem with. One was too dark. Another had neighbors who looked noisy. A third had a kitchen layout he didn't like. It was a deliberate campaign of obstruction. He was digging his heels in, betting that Ben would eventually give up, and I would be the one forced to leave permanently. I made my position unwaveringly clear to Ben. I will have no part in this search. I will not see him. I will not speak to him. Every time I am near him, my mental health plummets. This is your problem to solve, Ben. You allowed this to happen. You need to fix it. It was harsh, but it was the truth. For the first time, Ben didn't argue. He just nodded, a look of grim determination on his face. He was finally understanding that his desire to please everyone was destroying everything. So here we are. The search continues, stalled by Arthur's stubbornness. Ben is staying in our apartment, and I'm still in a long-term hotel rental, living out of a suitcase. We talk every day, but the conversations are heavy, focused on logistics and real estate listings. The easy intimacy we once shared is gone, replaced by the ghost of his father and the weight of my unresolved grief. I don't know if we can come back from this. I love Ben, but I'm not sure love is enough to erase the memory of those months spent feeling invisible in my own home. It's been 4 months since my world fell apart, and I'm finally ready to close this chapter. The journey to this point was longer and more painful than I ever imagined. After weeks of stalemate, Ben finally did what he should have done a year ago. He put his foot down. He found a clean, comfortable one-bedroom apartment in a quiet complex about 20 minutes from our place. He told Arthur, "This is the one. You can move in here, or you can find your own place back in Ohio. but you cannot stay with us. The decision is yours." Faced with the loss of his son's financial support and proximity, Arthur, with immense resentment, agreed. The move was swift and silent. I did not help. I did not say goodbye. But Arthur's departure from our home didn't mean peace. It was simply the start of a new kind of war. The guilt-tripping began in earnest. He called Ben daily, complaining of loneliness, of mysterious aches and pains, of neighbors who were out to get him. He enlisted his brothers, Ben's uncles, to call and berate him for his disloyalty. The narrative was always the same. I was the wicked which who had stolen his son. It was a relentless campaign, and for a few weeks I watched Ben buckle under the pressure. He was short-tempered, distracted, and miserable. One night, he came to my hotel room looking utterly defeated. He says he's having chest pains again. Ben said his head in his hands. He says the doctor told him stress is bad for his heart. I sat down beside him. "Ben, look at me. Is he got a doctor? Has he been hospitalized?" "No, but nothing," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "He is using his health as a weapon to control you, and if you allow it, he will do this for the rest of his life. We will never have a life of our own." It was a moment of profound clarity for him. He saw the manipulation for what it was. He didn't stop visiting or support his father, but he stopped engaging with the emotional blackmail. He'd listen to complaints and simply say, "I'm sorry you feel that way, Dad. Let me know if you need me to take you to a doctor's appointment." He established boundaries, and he held them firm. Slowly, the constant calls dwindled. Arthur realized his tactics were no longer effective. A month ago, I moved back into our Seattle apartment. Walking through the door was surreal. It was clean, it was quiet, and it was mine. The first thing I did was go to the grocery store and buy a tube of my fancy fluoride-free toothpaste. I put it in the bathroom holder, right in the center, a small, symbolic act of reclaiming my space. Ben and I are in counseling. We're talking about the miscarriage, about the betrayal we both felt, about the grief of the life we thought we'd have. The dream of a biological child is gone, and that is a loss we are learning to mourn together. We've started to tentatively discuss other paths, adoption, perhaps. The future is no longer a clear, bright road, but it's a path we're looking down together, hand in hand. As for Arthur, he exists on the periphery of our lives. Ben sees him once a week for lunch. I do not join them. I have no desire to. The damage he did runs too deep. Forgiveness, for me, is not about absolving him. It's about releasing myself from the anger, and I'm getting there. This will be my final update. Our story isn't a fairy tale with a perfect happy ending. There's too much scar tissue for that, but it's an ending with hope. We are rebuilding piece by piece in the quiet, peaceful sanctuary of our home. We are learning to be a team again. And for now, that is enough.